بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم أما بعد. In our last lesson we stopped off talking about the difference between Malik and Malik, because in the verse Maliki Yawmiddin there's two different recitations, and these are known as the qira'at. These are all revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and via Jibreel alayhi salam. He taught it to the Sahaba, they taught it to the Tabi'un, and so on and so forth until today's time. So just like everyone reads Maliki Yawmiddin, similarly, it's equal strength to recite it Maliki Yawmiddin. Now the difference in the meaning is Malik is a king, and Malik is an owner, and Malik without the alif is a king. So the plural of Malik is Muluk, and I'm not sure what the plural of Malik is. Maybe, Malikun or something like that. Ism fa'il. So we talked about the differences and why some mufassirs, they prefer one meaning over the other. It's not that they deny the other meaning. What they're doing is actually saying that this meaning is more powerful in Arabic than the other meaning, and that is fine. It is not correct for a person to say that this recitation is wrong, because then you'd be denying the Quran. Okay, now the second part of that verse, Maliki Yawmiddin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the king or the owner of Yawmiddin. Yawmuddin is talking about the day of judgment. It means the day of recompense, the day of jaza, or the day of a reward. The day when a person will be given what they earned. So if dunya is seen as the grounds in which we sow, you sow your seeds in the dunya, whatever plants, whatever things you're doing. In the akhirah, that's when you reap what you sow. So Yawmuddin is the day of getting what you have sowed. So that's what that means. Here, deen doesn't mean like the day of religion. Deen also means religion, but here, deen is the day of recompense. That's why it's translated that way, if you probably read some translations. So why does it state he is the owner or king of Yawmuddin, of the day of judgment? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner and the king of everything normally, right? Like right now, he's the king of everything in the universe, and he is the owner of it. So what is the reason why he specifies the day of judgment? So that's what we're going to talk about here. One reason is that the day of judgment is the most overwhelming day in all of creation. So there has never been such a tremendous, overwhelming, scary day as the day of judgment. And when it occurs, there will never be such a day afterward. Right? So it is the most overwhelming day. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the king and owner of that day, it shows his grandeur. That he is the possessor and the king of such a tremendous day, it shows how great he must be. If Yawm al-Qiyamah is great, if Yawm al-Qiyamah is, there's so many attributes of Yawm al-Qiyamah, then think about the one that created it. It's the day when all the kings of this dunya who lived, who are currently living, who will live, they will be equal to peasants. They will be equal to the most poor individual that ever lived in this dunya. Kings and paupers, they will be the same. And no one can benefit one another. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, يَوْمَ لَا تَمْلِكُ نَفْسٌ لِنَفْسٍ شَيْئًا وَالْأَمْرُ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلَّهِ. That is the day wherein no soul will be able to benefit any other soul in the least. And all affairs are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that day. So that's one reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that he is the king or owner of the day of judgment, because it's an overwhelming day. So think about the one that made that day and who possesses that day. Now, a second reason. Yawm means that everything that will happen in that day belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Yawm is like, a day. So Yawm al-Qiyamah is a specific period of time. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does mention how long it will be. In some verses, He says 50,000 years. In some verses, He says 1,000 years. There's no real contradiction because this is talking about how it is perceived. So some people will perceive the Day of Judgment to be 50,000 years, and some people will perceive the Day of Judgment to be 1,000 years. And some people will perceive, in the hadith we're told, the Day of Judgment to be as short as between Asr and Maghrib. The more pious an individual is, the shorter they will feel the Day of Judgment to be. So there's no real contradiction in the Quran in that regard. If someone tries to say, like, it's not making sense, one is 50,000, one is 1,000, it's perception. So now, what is going to happen in that period of time, that specific day? A day is a period of time. In our world, it's 24 hours. But on the Day of Judgment, it's not according to earth days. It's a different type of day. And Allah does say in the Quran that like a day according to Allah is 50,000 years. Or 1,000 years, if I'm remembering the verse in Surah Sajda, I believe. So on that day, everything that occurred in this world, in this entire life that we have, from Adam alayhi salam to the last human, is going to be discussed. It's a review. It's basically the day of the report card, if you will, right? If we're allowed to name the Day of Judgment, then is the day of the report card. I don't know, in school, do they have a name for the day they give out report cards? They don't have a name for it?
Judgment Day? No.
Judgment Day? So it's like that. So those who did good, they're looking forward to their grades. Those who did very poorly, they're dreading that day. They don't look forward to it.
It's usually around the parent-teacher conference meeting times.
So around, yeah, but I don't think they have a specific name for the day. But it's like a report card. So everything's going to be reviewed. So now if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of everything that is to be, everything that is reviewed on that day, then in reality He's the owner of the dunya as well. Right? So like by saying He is the owner of Yawm al-Qiyamah, and on Yawm al-Qiyamah everything in the dunya is discussed, He's also the owner of the dunya as well. Right? So actually Yawm al-Qiyamah is the merging point of dunya and akhirah. Right? It is basically the gateway that leads to Jannah or Jahannam, which is the akhirah. And it is the gateway from dunya to akhirah. So it can be seen as the in-between. So if He's the owner of that, then He's the owner of both as well. That which it preceded it and that which it is leading to. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of all of that. So that's another way we can understand it, that everything that happens on Yawm al-Qiyamah belongs to Allah, and the discussion of everything that occurred in this universe is going to happen on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Thus, Allah owns that as well. Now, a third reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions He is the owner of the Day of Judgment is that this is an indication to the falsehood of dunya. Right? Dunya is a facade, as we're told. It's like a fake appearance. It seems to be a specific way. It seems to be eternal. It seems to be never-ending. But it's a trick. Really, it's trying to get, like the dunya itself is a test, as we know. It's trying to get people to get involved in it. A test is something that is trying to trip you up, right? And in every test, they're giving you questions in such a way, they're trying to get you to make a mistake. Why? Because they want to see if you really understand it or not. Now, if they gave you the answers and they made the questions easy, it wouldn't be a test. So this dunya is built in such a way where it tries to get a person stuck and tripped up and stuff like that, to see who is greater than another. So the dunya is actually a facade, it's fake. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say Malikud din, He says Maliki Yawmiddin. I'm sorry, He doesn't say Maliki Dunya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say that He is the owner of dunya. When in reality He is, but He doesn't say it. He says He's the owner of the Day of Judgment. This is an indication to show that dunya is insignificant and the Day of Judgment is really important. So it shows you the importance of the Day of Judgment. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He is the owner of dunya, it shows the importance of the dunya. Whereas in reality, He doesn't really care about the dunya. There's a hadith where Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that if this entire dunya equated the value of the wing of a fly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning if Allah cared about the dunya at all, even just the amount of a wing of a fly, people don't even care that much about anything. It's so insignificant. But even that little bit amount of care, then He wouldn't even give a drink of water to a kafir. Meaning a kafir is one who does not believe in Allah. Allah would be upset about it. Like, how dare you not believe in me? This dunya is really important. How could you do this to me? I'm not going to give you a drink of water. But in reality, He doesn't care about the dunya, and that's why the kuffar, they have a lot. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us by attributing His ownership to the Day of Judgment that the dunya is something that's not really important. And the Day of Judgment is important. That is something that you should consider to be very important. In fact, it should shape the way you think about everything. If you are cognizant and aware of Yawm al-Qiyamah, it's going to shape the way you speak, shape the way you behave with others, shape the way you wake up, the way you sleep, the way you dress. Everything is going to be changed. It's a paradigm shift when you realize Yawm al-Qiyamah is important. So here it's basically an indication that Yawm al-Qiyamah is important, the dunya is not important. All right. Now, as I mentioned before, deen, here, deen doesn't mean religion. Deen means, in Arabic, jaza. Jaza means like recompense or getting what you deserve. So it is the day of, sometimes you might see in translation, the day of requital, the day of recompense, the way they're translating, it's because deen actually here means, in the Arabic, jaza. Jaza is like, okay, when you do something for someone, they do something back for you. It's basically giving, like making the whole situation equal, right? It's like, for instance, you say, Jazakallahu khairan. Jazakallah. The ka is like you. So jazaka, Allahu is the fa'il. So jaza means, may Allah give you what you deserve. So Yawm al-Din, it's a reference to Yawm al-Qiyamah. It doesn't mean Yawm al-Qiyamah. It's another name for Yawm al-Qiyamah. Yawm al-Qiyamah has many different names, so this is one of the names of Yawm al-Qiyamah. So in the previous verse, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is the previous verse? Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about His mercy. And here in Maliki Yawmiddin, Allah's not talking about His mercy, He's talking about His authority. Right? Authority, why? Because He owns this day, everything that occurs, nothing goes out of His control. You are basically in a good situation or a bad situation, but it's all under His power on that day. Now, everything's under His power on this day too, but He lets things go the way people want it to go. Like, so if someone wants to harm someone, they can harm someone and get away with it today. That's what's happening throughout the world. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, you can't do anything out of your own accord. You're basically like stuck where you are. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the previous verse, He talks about His mercy. In this verse, Maliki Yawmiddin, He talks about His authority. He does not talk about His wrath, however. In Surah al-Fatiha, He's not talking about, except all the way at the end, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ. Maghdubi alayhim, those people who have earned Allah's anger. He doesn't talk about it in the beginning. So the first few ayahs of Surah al-Fatiha are all about Allah's attributes that He's highlighting. He doesn't talk about His wrath. The reason for this is, on the Day of Judgment, no one is really receiving Allah's wrath per se, meaning like hatred, anger. Although I would say that in the hadith, the hadith of Shafa'ah, a very lengthy hadith where people come and ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to start the Day of Judgment. All the other prophets that were, sought out by the people. If you guys remember the hadith, it's like everyone goes to Adam alayhi salam and says that ask Allah to start Qiyamah. It's very difficult. And then they go to Nuh, and then they go to Ibrahim alayhi salam. And one of the things the prophets say in one variation is that Allah is so angry today, He's never been this angry before. The ghadab of Allah today, the manifestation of Allah's ghadab is more than ever before. So yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry on the Day of Judgment. However, the point that I'm making here is, in Surah Fatiha, He does not describe Himself as being angry on the Day of Judgment. He doesn't talk about His wrath. He just talks about mercy, and He talks about authority. And the reason for this is on the Day of Judgment, there's two categories of people. One type of person is going to receive the mercy of Allah, and the other is going to receive the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not His wrath. So what happens when you're like extremely angry at a person? You tend to treat them in a way that they actually don't deserve. You go overboard. Like when you have wrath, the connotation of wrath is like going overboard. And someone pushed you, so then you like beat them up 2-3 hits. That's not equal, right? If they shoved you, then you shove them back with a similar amount of strength. Doing more than that is dhulm. They didn't deserve that. So on the Day of Judgment, Allah does not do dhulm. He doesn't oppress anyone. He either shows them a favor by entering them into Jannah or forgiving their sin, or He gives them justice. He will only give them what they deserve. And this is mentioned in a verse of Quran in Surah Al-Ghafir, verse 16. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اليوم تجزى كل نفس بما كسبت لا ظلم اليوم إن الله سريع الحساب. Today, meaning the Day of Judgment, every soul will get what it has earned. Every soul will be given what it has earned. لا ظلم اليوم, there is no oppression today. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is quick to take people to task. So here, another indication that we get from Yawmiddin. Why is Allah Maliki Yawmiddin? On Yawmiddin, the word deen itself means recompense, to give back. And this is an indication that Allah will not do dhulm. Allah will not oppress. He will either have mercy, and He will give people what they don't deserve, meaning in terms of goodness, or He will give people what they deserve, punishment in the fire of Jahannam. Right, so that is the connotation you get from Yawmiddin. In short, Yawmiddin indicates that Allah will not do dhulm. He will not oppress anyone. He will not do something that a person does not deserve, in the sense of punishment. Right? Of course, no one deserves Jannah, but that's a manifestation of mercy. The next thing I want to talk about is that the Day of Judgment is logical, a very logical thing. How so? If we try to make an argument out of it, we could say, we already previously spoke about the existence of Allah being rational. So we're not going to repeat that again. But the fact that everything exists, it's an indication that Allah exists. There's a more sophisticated argument for that. But here we could say, regarding the Day of Judgment, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course He exists, and He is characterized with the greatest of traits. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like if you want a summary of Allah's attributes, He has all attributes of perfection and no attribute of weakness, no attribute of imperfection. That's what every Muslim has to believe. Allah is perfect. So now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has these attributes of perfection. Okay. Now, the second part of the argument is that justice is a good characteristic. Being just, being good, giving people what they deserve, that's a good character trait. Everyone understands that. I mean, our entire government, our way of life, it's built on that, right? We have courts, we have judges, we have all of this. So justice is a good characteristic. So now when you put the first two together, Allah has all good character traits. Justice is a good character trait. Thus Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the attribute of justice in the greatest form. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just. There's no one more just than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now once that is understood, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just, when we look at the dunya, we see that there are some people who are physically stronger and they have prowess in the dunya. And what they do is they take the rights of the weak. This happens, and it is happening now, and it's always been happening in the history of the world, and it will continue to happen. You will always have tyrants, you will always have these people who harm the weaker people in the world. Now these people, they get away with it, right? So that's why we are outraged. We don't like seeing this. This person is so wealthy, so strong, they have a government and they have an army and they're just harming the weak. How can they get away with this? This is not right. So we're watching this before our eyes. Then we also see, the pious people, the righteous people, they do good deeds, they're good to people, they have good hearts, they're generous, but they have very tough lives, right? They're going through difficulty. A lot of them. A lot of them are poor, a lot of them are downtrodden, a lot of them are harmed by other people. So when you see this, you see like, where's the justice? Where is the justice in this world? Actually, there is no real justice, right? And all of this, the quote unquote justice that you see from the governments, nowadays we can see it's just all a facade. Maybe 20, 30 years ago we could be fooled because there was no media, the way it is, like free media now. But now you just see, you lose hope. We've lost, I think the majority of the world's population have lost hope in their governments, meaning to be just. That is what everyone wants, but they're not getting it. They're not getting it. Excuse me. So what is the summary of what I'm trying to say? Is that Allah has the quality of justice, and He's the owner of the dunya, but we're not seeing justice in this dunya. If that's the case, and if we say that if justice is not carried out in the dunya, then there has to be a time where justice is carried out. Like if Allah is there, and that's our belief, we already established Allah is there, and He is just, there needs to be a place where the justice is going to be meted out to people. It's not happening in the dunya, there has to be a place where it's going to happen. So that is where Yawm al-Qiyamah comes in. So that's our rationale, that Yawm al-Qiyamah actually makes sense. You know, a person can harm people, they can kill people, they can steal their land and property and get away with it. No one is saying anything. Then, you know, that's why a lot of people question, is there a God even? Yes, there is. You just have to wait. Like, you know, you have to wait to see Yawm al-Qiyamah. You want it right now. This is not, you know, a misconception that people have is that, you know, we live in Jannah. Like, no, you live in a test. Of course you're not going to see everything being perfect right now. This is a test. They're all upset. Like, you know, if there was a God, why are kids dying out of hunger? Well, why aren't you paying for their food? Why aren't you helping them? You know, why don't you gather people and do that? This is all a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is allowing it to happen. That child that dies out of hunger, they're going to get something really good in the Day of Judgment. And then when the child sees that, he'll be like, I wish I could live 1,000 lives of hunger for what I'm receiving now. And the person that oppressed him, he thinks he's getting away on the Day of Judgment. He'll be like, I wish I never did that. I wish I could go back and do something else. It's actually mentioned in the Quran. They make a request, oh Allah, let me go back. So the Day of Judgment is very logical, it's very rational that there will be such a thing. If you believe in Allah and you believe that He is a just creator, then you will believe in Yawm al-Qiyamah. Okay, so that's regarding Yawm al-Qiyamah. And it's mentioned in Surah al-Fatiha because it's such an important belief. Like, as I mentioned before, it shapes everything in our lives. Yawm al-Qiyamah, that belief that there will be a day where Allah is going to ask us about what we did, it shapes everything. If we didn't have that belief, then people would oppress. Muslims would oppress. But that belief is the single thing that is holding us back. Of course, we follow the sunnah, we follow the prophetic character, we do what's right, but the deterrent, you need a deterrent from all of the sins, right? Because the attraction of the dunya is very strong. So the nafs wants to do haram, the nafs wants to fulfill its desires. So sometimes it's not enough to say that, okay, live a righteous life because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived a righteous life. Sometimes we need an actual threat, a deterrent, and that is Yawm al-Qiyamah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions it in Surah al-Fatiha. Now, doing a recap of the first three verses that we talked about, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. These are the three verses we've mentioned so far. Allah mentions in these three verses many of His attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Rabbul Alameen, Lord of the universe, merciful, extremely merciful and permanently merciful, and owner or king of the day of recompense. So these are the three first verses. Now, what are some of these qualities if we can recap? Number one, Allah says that He is the Rabb. Rabb is a cherisher and a nourisher. And that's why Yusuf alayhi salam, he says when Zulaykha approached him, she wanted to fulfill her desires with him. He said, "Ma'adh Allah, I seek Allah's protection from what you're asking me to do. Innahu Rabbi ahsana mathwai. He is my Rabb." And he's talking about his the Aziz, not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. According to the popular tafsir, right? You'll find the other tafsir that he's talking about Allah, but he's talking about her husband. He is my Rabb, and he has treated me well. So what does that mean? Like how is Zulaykha's husband his Lord? It's not Lord, is the one that is raising me, the one that is taking care of me. That's what Rabb actually means. And that's why there's a dua of parents, Rabbi irhamhuma kama rabbayani saghira. Oh Allah, have mercy on them as they did a Rabb of me. They were my Rabb when I was small, meaning they took care of me. So when we say Allah is a Rabbul Alameen, we get the connotation He is a cherisher, He is a nourisher, He's very personal, He's close, He knows you very well. There's a connotation of love there, because the word Rabb has a connotation of love. Parents are loving, people who take care of you, guardians are loving. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that for the entire universe. The second trait that we see is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is extremely merciful. So Rahman, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Rahman is extremely merciful. That's an easy translation, right? They have different translations. You can say extremely merciful and Rahim, permanently merciful. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is extremely merciful. He gives you these huge blessings. Air, food, clothing, shelter, all the big blessings in life. And then the third quality we see is Ar-Rahim, Ar-Rahim, permanently merciful, but the minute, small things that we overlook. Small little things, every single thing is a ni'mah. Let's say the lights that we're utilizing right now, the carpet, the various things that we have, a car, or as fine as you can think about, right? Even the chemical reactions that are occurring in your gut, right? When you have, I think there's like little, what do you call it? Enzymes or like microbes inside your stomach, like bacteria inside your stomach. And that's why they say you have to drink the yogurt with the probiotics, because those are live cultures inside, live things inside the yogurt, and you drink that, and it helps your gut. So all of this happening, you don't know about it. These are manifestations of Ar-Rahim, the minutest things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes care of. Then when you go to Malik, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sharing with us that He is the king. And the king is very grand. He's not like a pushover, right? We talked about when you hear Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, it's like so much mercy, maybe I can get away with stuff. Like Allah knows that I'm doing it. I know He knows that I'm doing it, but maybe He'll just forgive me. Let me just do whatever I want. But then Allah follows that up with Maliki Yawmiddin. Don't mess around, because Allah will and He can take you to task. So when you hear that He's the Maliki Yawmiddin, He's the king, it kind of puts a little bit fear inside you. And then when He says Maliki Yawmiddin, He's the owner, then you get the connotation that Allah is my Malik, He's my owner, and He's my sustainer. So I owe Him something. I should show my shukr to Him. And so those are the qualities that we mention in the first three verses. Now, after the first three verses, there is a shift. If you look at the way Surah Fatiha is it's said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is spoken of in the third person. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. All praises to Allah. He is merciful. He is the Lord of the Day of Judgment. A shift occurs in the fourth verse. It goes from the third person to the second, right? Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Only You do we worship. Only You do we ask for help. So it becomes very personal when you reach ayah number 4. There's a shift. And this is very common in the Quran, where it's called in Balagha, it's called iltifat. Iltifat means that you turn from one tense to another tense. And it's sudden. You need to grasp what is happening, like read between the lines, because they won't tell you that this is happening. So in the Quran, this happens a lot. Sometimes it'll be like, talking about someone, and suddenly you're talking to them. That's what happens here in verse number 4. We were talking about Allah. He is this, He is merciful, He is the Lord of the universe. And now we are talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is a change in the tense. Now, what is the connection? Because every ayah in the Quran is very connected with the previous. What is the connection of إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ with the previous verses? In the first three verses of Fatiha, we're introduced to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Allah tells us about who He is. Lord of the universe, merciful, and also owner of the day of judgment. So these are the essential things that you need to know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those three things. Lord of the universe, no one else created it. That's really important. Number two, He's very merciful too. Personal, He knows you. And number three, you can't take advantage of Him. There's a day of judgment. So these are really essential things that we need to know. Now, after the first three verses, when we get like a understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there's a conclusion that occurs. Like a person who's learning about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if they learn about Allah via the first three verses, then something happens in the fourth verse, and that's they build a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So verse number 4 of Surah al-Fatiha talks about our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not about Allah's attributes anymore. And that's why the tense shift occurs. Right? When you're talking about Allah's attributes, you talk about Him as a distant individual, that these are His attributes. But now when you talk about your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it becomes very personal. Only you do we worship, only you do we ask for help. Okay. Now, there's another point that is mentioned in some tafsirs, and that is a human being's life is within time, right? We live within time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beyond time. Like when He created the universe, before the creation of the universe, there was no time. And this is even scientifically understood, right? Like there was no space, there was no time. But Allah was there, which tells you that Allah is beyond space and time. You cannot fathom who or what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. So our lives are subject to time. So we have past, present, and future. One mufassir, he says that the first three verses allude to these time periods in your life. The first two verses, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, they show that a person's past and present is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is to be praised and thanked for that. So all praise is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Lord of the universe, extremely merciful. So some people are grasping from that you show thanks for what you have. So you don't show thanks for the future. Like how can you show thanks for the future? You don't know what it holds. Anything that is to happen in the future, you don't possess it yet. So you actually possess what you have right now and in the past. Allah, you treated me well. Oh Allah, you're giving me food right now and you gave me food yesterday. It's not that, oh Allah, you gave me food right now and you gave me food yesterday and you will give me food tomorrow. You don't know that. So you cannot praise Allah for the future. So they say the first two verses are about the past and the present. And in verse 3, it's about the future. You're apprehensive about what will happen in the future. Right? So this alludes to your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then finally you go to إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, and it's more clear that we're talking about this relationship. Now, when we go forward in this verse, this is a very important verse. It's kind of like the center of Surah al-Fatiha. And as I mentioned, it talks about our relationship with Allah. Here I want to talk about the definition and explanation of ibadah. Oh, okay. Salat time changed.
I didn't. I found out
Just now?
a few minutes ago. Yeah.
Okay, I was like, subhanAllah, we're going to have to go long. All right, so let's see. Inshallah, we can stop here. This is a very important subject we're going to talk about next time. What is ibadah? Like, what is a technical definition? What is shirk? And what is ibadah? And what is, what is iman? Because here we're saying, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ. Only you do we worship. What does that mean? If I don't know what ibadah is, and I mistakenly direct that to someone who's not Allah, what will happen to me? And what actually entails ibadah? Sometimes a person may think that, oh no, I've directed ibadah to something other than Allah, but then it wasn't ibadah in the first place. So we're going to discuss all of these inshallah next week. and we will continue then. وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.